The fluorescent hospital lights buzzed overhead as I gripped my phone, watching the time tick past midnight. 2:47 a.m. My mother, Katia, had been in the operating room for what should have been a routine angioplasty for over 4 hours now. Something was terribly wrong. I'll never forget the look on the surgeon's face when he finally emerged. His scrubs were soaked with sweat, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, and something else. Fear. "There were complications," he said, and those 3 words changed the trajectory of our lives forever. But to understand what happened that night, I need to take you back to the beginning. To understand how a 67-year-old woman with a sweet tooth and a stubborn streak wider than the Grand Canyon ended up fighting for her life on an operating table. My mother, Katia, was never one for moderation. At 67, she lived life like a rebellious teenager. Rules were suggestions, doctor's orders were merely opinions, and dessert was not just a course, but a lifestyle. "Life's too short to count calories," she'd say, reaching for her 3rd slice of chocolate cake at family dinners. We'd exchange worried glances across the table, but no one dared challenge her. Katia had perfected the art of deflection through humor and sheer force of personality. Her medicine cabinet looked like a small pharmacy. Metformin for her type 2 diabetes, lisinopril for high blood pressure, levothyroxine for her thyroid condition. But taking them consistently? That was another story entirely. "I feel fine today," she'd announce, skipping doses whenever she felt like it. "My body knows what it needs better than any doctor." The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Here was a woman who'd raised 3 children, run a successful catering business for 20 years, and could organize a dinner party for 50 without breaking a sweat. Yet she couldn't, or wouldn't, organize her own health routine. Her weight had been climbing steadily over the years. What started as a few extra pounds after menopause had evolved into obesity that made climbing stairs an Olympic event. She'd pause halfway up, pretending to admire the family photos on the wall while catching her breath. "Just enjoying the memories," she'd say, fooling no one. The sugar cravings controlled her life like a puppeteer pulling strings. She'd hide candy bars in her purse, stash cookies in her nightstand, and always had an emergency chocolate supply in her car. When we'd find these hidden treasures during visits, she'd laugh it off. "A woman needs her secrets," she'd wink, as if we were talking about love letters instead of contraband confectionery. It was a Tuesday morning in March when the first real warning came. I'd called to check on her, as I did every morning since Dad passed 5 years earlier. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then 4, 5, 6. My heart started racing. Mom always answered by the 3rd ring. It was one of her quirks. 3 rings is polite, she'd say. 1 is too eager. 5 is rude. I grabbed my keys and drove the 15 minutes to her house in record time, running 2 yellow lights and praying to every deity I could think of. When I found her, she was on the kitchen floor, conscious but confused. "I just got a little dizzy," she insisted as I helped her up. "Probably just low blood sugar." The irony of someone with consistently high blood sugar claiming hypoglycemia wasn't lost on me, but this wasn't the time for lectures. The ambulance ride to the emergency room was silent, except for the beeping monitors and Mum's repeated assurances that everyone was overreacting. The ER doctor didn't mince words. "Mrs. Katia, your blood pressure is 190 over 110. Your blood sugar is over 400. You're a ticking time bomb." Even then, lying in a hospital bed with IV lines snaking from her arms, she tried to bargain. "But I feel fine now. Can't I just take some extra medication at home?" That's when they discovered the blockages. The EKG showed irregularities, leading to an angiogram that revealed 3 significantly blocked arteries. The cardiologist, Dr. Martinez, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't sugarcoat the situation. "You need an angioplasty, Mrs. Katia. Soon. Your left anterior descending artery is 85% blocked. We call that the widow maker for a reason." Mom paled at the term, the first crack in her armor of denial, but true to form, she tried to negotiate. Can we do it after my granddaughter's birthday party next month? I'm making her favorite cake. Dr. Martinez's expression didn't change. You can have the procedure this week, or you can risk not being there for any more birthday parties. Your choice. The week leading up to the angioplasty was a masterclass in Katia's emotional manipulation tactics. She cycled through the 5 stages of grief like she was speed dating them. Denial. Maybe the tests were wrong. I've been feeling much better since I left the hospital. Anger. This is all because you kids keep stressing me out about my eating habits. Stress is worse than sugar. Bargaining. What if I promised to walk every day and only have dessert on Sundays? Depression. What's the point? Your father managed to die without all this fuss. And finally, a grudging acceptance mixed with theatrical martyrdom. Fine, but if I die on that table, make sure they play my favorite songs at the funeral. I spent those days at her house, ostensibly helping her prepare, but really making sure she didn't back out. We went through her medications together, organized them in a weekly pill container that she'd ignored for years. I cleaned out her candy stashes, which was like an archaeological dig through layers of sugar history. Those are from last Christmas, she'd protest as I threw out rock-hard candy canes. Mom, it's October. They're still good. We talked about the procedure, or rather, I talked while she found creative ways to change the subject. She'd suddenly remember urgent tasks, photo albums that needed organizing, thank you cards from 3 years ago that still needed sending, a recipe she absolutely had to write down for posterity. But at night, when the distractions fell away, I saw her fear. She'd sit in Dad's old recliner, staring at their wedding photo, her fingers unconsciously rubbing her chest where the pain had been. I'm not ready to join him yet, she whispered once, thinking I couldn't hear from the kitchen. Those words broke my heart and steeled my resolve. We were going to get through this, whether she cooperated or not. October 15th arrived with the kind of crisp autumn morning that makes you believe in fresh starts. Mom was scheduled for 8 a.m., which meant arriving at 6 for prep. She'd been fasting since midnight, which for someone who usually had a 2 a.m. snack was already a heroic feat. I could eat my own arm right now, she grumbled as we checked in at the cardiac unit. The pre-op room was a beige box of medical efficiency. Nurses moved with practiced precision, inserting IVs, checking vitals, asking the same questions over and over. Mom answered with decreasing patience, her anxiety manifesting as irritability. Yes, I'm allergic to shellfish. Yes, I've told 6 people already. No, I haven't eaten anything. Do you people not communicate? I held her hand as they wheeled her toward the operating room. Her fingers, usually warm and soft, were ice-cold and trembling. It's just a routine procedure, the anesthesiologist assured us. Dr. Martinez has done thousands of these. You'll be watching TV by lunch. Mom managed a weak smile. Make sure it's something good, none of those judge shows. As they pushed her through the double doors, she called back, if anything happens, the good jewelry is in the freezer behind the ice cream. Classic Mom, using humor as armor until the very end. The waiting room became my universe. 17 chairs, 3 tables with year-old magazines, a coffee machine that made everything taste like burnt rubber, and a clock that moved in slow motion. Other families came and went, their relief palpable as doctors delivered good news. An hour passed, then 2. By hour 3, I'd memorized every travel magazine cover and started creating elaborate backstories for everyone in the room. The angioplasty should have taken 45 minutes, maybe 90 at most. When Dr. Martinez finally appeared at 12:47 p.m., still in her surgical scrubs, I knew immediately something had gone wrong. Her usual composed demeanor was cracked, stress lines etching her forehead. There were complications, she began, and the room tilted slightly. She explained in careful medical terms that I'd later have to Google to fully understand. The blockage was worse than the imaging had shown. When they tried to place the stent, the artery had dissected, essentially torn. Mum's blood pressure had dropped dangerously, and they'd had to perform emergency measures to stabilize her. She coded twice on the table, Dr. Martinez said quietly. We got her back, but it was touch and go. She's stable now, but the next 24 hours are critical. Coded. Such a clinical term for dying and being yanked back to life. Twice. Can I see her? She's in the cardiac ICU. She's sedated and on a ventilator. It might be difficult to see her like that. Nothing could have prepared me for that sight. My larger-than-life mother looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, dwarfed by machines that beeped and hummed and breathed for her. Tubes and wires created a medical spiderweb around her still form. I sat beside her, afraid to touch anything, afraid to disturb the delicate balance keeping her alive. The nurse, a young man named David with kind eyes, explained each machine, each number on the monitors. Talk to her, he suggested. Hearing familiar voices helps. So I talked. I told her about the traffic on the way to the hospital, about the awful coffee, about how the waiting room needed better magazines. I talked until my throat was raw, filling the silence with mundane life because I was terrified of what that silence might mean. They say hospitals never sleep, and the cardiac ICU proved it. Every hour brought new tests, new numbers, new worried looks between medical staff. I learned to read the monitors like tea leaves, celebrating when her oxygen levels improved by a single point, panicking when her blood pressure dipped. Around 3 a.m. something changed. Mum's fingers moved slightly in mine. Then her eyes fluttered. The night nurse immediately checked her pupils, her vitals, making notes on her chart. She's fighting, she told me. That's a good sign. By dawn, Mom was breathing over the ventilator, trying to talk around the tube. Dr. Martinez arrived at 6 a.m., looking like she'd slept as little as I had. The worst is over, she announced after examining Mom. We'll remove the ventilator this morning if she continues to improve. The tube came out at 9 a.m. Mum's first words, in a voice hoarse from the ventilator, were predictably her. Did you cancel my hair appointment? I laughed and cried simultaneously. Mom, you almost died twice, and you're worried about your hair. Death is no excuse for bad roots, she croaked, managing a weak smile. Recovery wasn't just physical. It was a complete restructuring of Mom's relationship with mortality and, by extension, her lifestyle. The first few days in the ICU were a blur of medications, monitoring, and Mom's growing realization of how close she'd come to leaving us. I saw him, you know, she told me on day 3, her voice stronger but still soft. Your father. He told me it wasn't time yet, whether it was the medication, oxygen deprivation, or something more spiritual. I didn't question it. If believing Dad had sent her back helped her fight, I was all for it. Dr. Martinez didn't sugarcoat the situation during her rounds. Mrs. Katia, you got incredibly lucky. The damage to your artery could have been fatal. Your lifestyle choices nearly killed you. For once, Mom didn't deflect or make jokes. She listened, really listened, as the doctor outlined the strict regimen that would govern her life moving forward. No more sugar binges, no more skipping medications, no more treating your body like it's indestructible. Your heart has been through trauma. It needs respect and care. The nutritionist visited next, armed with meal plans that made Mom's face fall with each eliminated favorite food. The cardiac rehabilitation therapist outlined an exercise program that started with walking to the bathroom and eventually would build to 30 minutes of daily activity. This is worse than prison, Mom muttered after they left. Prison would have been that coffin you almost ended up in, I shot back, harsher than intended. She looked at me then, really looked, and saw what the past week had done to me. The dark circles, the weight loss from surviving on hospital cafeteria food and anxiety, the way my hands shook from too much coffee and too little sleep. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry I put you through this. It was the first time in my life I'd heard my mother genuinely apologize for anything more serious than burning dinner. The transition home after 2 weeks in the hospital was harder than either of us anticipated. Mum's house, once a testament to her independence, now felt like an obstacle course. The stairs she'd struggled with before were now Mount Everest. The bathroom seemed miles from her bedroom. The kitchen, her former kingdom, was full of food she could no longer eat. We converted the dining room into a temporary bedroom. I took family medical leave from work and moved in, transforming from daughter to caregiver overnight. The role reversal was jarring for both of us. "I can do it myself," she'd insist, trying to shower alone, only to emerge exhausted and shaking. "I don't need supervision," she'd argue, as I counted out her pills, making sure she took each one. But gradually, the fight went out of her. Not in defeat, but in acceptance. She began to see medication compliance not as surrender, but as choosing life. Exercise became less punishment and more celebration of what her body could still do. The sugar withdrawal was the hardest. Mom went through what I can only describe as detox. Mood swings, cravings so intense she'd cry, dreams about chocolate cake that woke her in cold sweats. "Is this what drug addicts go through?" she asked one particularly bad evening, hands shaking as she pushed away the sugar-free jello I'd made. "Probably similar," I admitted. "But they don't get sugar-free jello as a consolation prize." She laughed despite herself. "God, this stuff is awful. Your father would have divorced me for serving it. We found substitutes, experimented with recipes, discovered that cinnamon could trick her brain into thinking something was sweeter than it was. Small victories became major celebrations. The first time she walked to the mailbox and back without stopping. The day her blood sugar reading came back in the normal range. The morning she woke up without chest pain. 3 months post-surgery, I barely recognized my mother, not just physically, though the weight loss was dramatic, but in her entire approach to life. The woman who once hoarded candy now read nutrition labels like scripture. The person who considered walking to the car exercise now did laps around the neighborhood. "Who are you and what did you do with my mother?" I joked as she measured out exactly 1 tablespoon of olive oil for her salad. "She almost died on an operating table," Mom replied matter-of-factly. "This one decided to stick around a while longer." The transformation went beyond diet and exercise. She started cardiac rehabilitation, joining a group of other heart patients for supervised workouts. To everyone's surprise, especially hers, she loved it. "They're all as stubborn as me," she reported after her first session. "But Gerald, he's 72, can do more push-ups than me. It's embarrassing. I need to catch up." Competitive Katia was new. The woman who'd previously competed only in who could eat the most dessert was now tracking steps, comparing blood pressure readings, celebrating cholesterol drops like sports victories. She became the unofficial cheerleader of cardiac rehab, encouraging newcomers who looked as scared and overwhelmed as she once had. "If I can do this," she'd tell them, "anyone can." I used to consider lifting the TV remote exercise. Her endocrinologist was stunned at her 6-month checkup. "Your A1C has dropped from 11.2 to 6.5. That's remarkable. What changed?" "I died twice," Mum said simply. "Turns out that's quite motivating." Mum's transformation had unexpected consequences throughout our family. Her grandchildren, who'd grown up watching Grandma sneak them extra cookies, now saw her measuring portions and choosing vegetables over cake. "Grandma's broken," my 6-year-old nephew announced after she declined birthday cake at his party. "No, sweetheart," she corrected gently. "Grandma's fixed. Finally." She started cooking again, but differently. The woman who'd run a catering business based on butter, sugar, and cream now experimented with herbs, spices, and techniques she'd previously mocked. "Who knew cauliflower could actually taste good?" she'd marvel, as if discovering a new continent. Her friends were bewildered at first. The lunch group that had bonded over shared desserts and complaints about diets struggled to adjust to the new Katia, who ordered salads and actually ate them. "You're making us look bad," her friend Marion complained, reaching for her third dinner roll while Mom contentedly ate her vegetables. "No," Mom corrected. "I'm trying not to die. There's a difference. Some friendships faded. Those built solely on shared vices couldn't survive Mom's lifestyle change, but new ones formed. She met walking buddies in the neighborhood, found kindred spirits in cardiac rehab, joined online support groups for heart patients. I never knew there were so many people like me," she marveled. "People who had to almost lose everything to appreciate it." The first anniversary of what we now called the event was emotional. Mom insisted on visiting Dr. Martinez, bringing her sugar-free, heart-healthy muffins she'd perfected after dozens of attempts. "I wanted to thank you," Mom said, pressing the container into the surprised doctor's hands. "For saving my life, yes, but more for giving me the wake-up call I needed." Dr. Martinez's usual professional composure cracked slightly. "Mrs. Katia, you're one of my success stories. Not just medically, but personally. Most patients don't make the changes you have." We celebrated that night with a dinner that would have horrified the old Katia: grilled salmon, quinoa salad, roasted vegetables. Mom raised her glass of sparkling water with a splash of pomegranate juice for celebration in a toast. "To second chances," she said, "and to the people who make sure we don't waste them." Her latest cardiac tests showed remarkable improvement. The damaged artery had healed well around the stent. Her other blockages had actually decreased thanks to medication and lifestyle changes. Her ejection fraction, a measure of heart-pumping efficiency, had improved from a concerning 35% to a near-normal 55%. "If I didn't know your history," her new cardiologist, Dr. Martinez had moved to another hospital, told her, "I'd think these were the results of someone 20 years younger." Mom beamed like she'd won an Olympic medal. Perhaps the most surprising development was Mom becoming an advocate for heart health. The woman who'd spent decades in denial about her own conditions now spoke at support groups, sharing her story with brutal honesty. "I was a fool," she'd begin, standing before rooms of pre-diabetics, heart patients, and their worried families. "I thought I was invincible. I thought rules didn't apply to me. It took dying twice to realize how wrong I was." She didn't sugarcoat, pun intended, her journey. She talked about the withdrawal symptoms, the depression that hit when she couldn't use food as comfort, the identity crisis of losing what she thought made her who she was. "I used to be the fun grandma who gave out candy," she'd say. "Now I'm the grandma who's alive to see her grandkids graduate." Her doctor asked her to participate in a study about patient compliance and lifestyle change. Mom became their star subject, her transformation documented as an example of what was possible with determination and support. She started a blog. Yes, my 68-year-old mother learned to blog, called Death, Dessert and Determination. Her posts were raw, honest, sometimes funny, always real. She wrote about crying in the grocery store when she couldn't buy her favorite ice cream, about the first time she ran, rapidly walked, a 5K, about learning that life without sugar was still sweet. The blog gained followers, hundreds then thousands of people who saw themselves in her story. Comments poured in from around the world, people sharing their own struggles, victories and setbacks. "I never thought I'd be an influencer," Mom laughed, reading comments on her latest post about navigating restaurant menus. "At my age, your father would have been so confused. It wasn't all smooth sailing. About 18 months after the angioplasty, Mom had a setback. Not physical, her heart was doing remarkably well, but emotional. The anniversary of Dad's death hit harder than usual, perhaps because she was no longer numbing herself with food. I found her in the kitchen at 2 a.m., standing in front of the open freezer, staring at a pint of ice cream I'd bought for myself. "I just wanted one bite," she said, tears streaming down her face, "just to remember how it felt when he was here and we'd share midnight snacks." We sat at the kitchen table and she talked about Dad, about their ritual of sharing dessert while watching late-night TV, about how food had been their love language. "I feel like I'm betraying him," she admitted. "Like changing everything means erasing our life together." We found other ways to honor Dad's memory. She started making his favorite soup, a healthy version, every Sunday. We looked through photo albums without the accompaniment of cookies. She wrote him letters in a journal, telling him about her new life. The therapist she started seeing, another miracle, Mom accepting mental health help, helped her understand that food had been not just comfort, but connection. They worked on finding new ways to connect with memories, with people, with herself. "Turns out I was eating my feelings," Mum told me after a particularly breakthrough session. "All this time I thought I just really liked cake." Mum's influence spread beyond our family and her blog. The cardiac rehab center asked her to become a peer counselor. The hospital where she'd nearly died invited her to speak at their annual Heart Health Symposium. Local newspapers picked up her story. "Local woman beats death and diabetes through lifestyle change," read one headline. Mom framed it, hanging it next to her before and after photos in what she called her motivation corner. She started teaching heart-healthy cooking classes at the community center. Watching my mother, who once considered opening a can an act of cooking, demonstrate how to properly saute vegetables was surreal. "The key is not to murder them with heat," she'd tell her students, many of whom were in similar health situations. "Vegetables should still have some life in them, unlike us who nearly didn't." Her dark humor about her near-death experience never faded, but it was tempered now with genuine gratitude and purpose. She partnered with local restaurants to create heart-healthy menu options, using her old catering connections for good. "If you'd told me 3 years ago I'd be promoting salads, I'd have laughed you out of my kitchen," she told a reporter. "But here we are. Life's funny that way." By the 3rd anniversary of her angioplasty, our new normal felt genuinely normal. Mom's daily routine revolved around health, but it no longer felt like punishment. Morning walks were social hours with her neighborhood group. Meal prep was creative time in the kitchen. Medication time was so routine, she no longer needed reminders. Her numbers told the story. Blood pressure controlled without increasing medication. A1C stable at 5.8, pre-diabetic but no longer fully diabetic. Cholesterol in normal range. Weight down 87 pounds from her heaviest. But the real changes weren't quantifiable. The woman who once hid candy now hid vegetables in her grandkids' favorite dishes. The person who avoided doctors now went to every appointment early. The grandmother who used to be too tired to play now coached her granddaughter's softball team. "I can't run the bases," she told the girls at their first practice, "but I can teach you strategy. And I make great sugar-free orange slices." Her relationship with food had fundamentally changed. It was fuel now, not comfort. Pleasure, but not purpose. She could walk past a bakery without longing, attend birthday parties without feeling deprived. "I still love the smell of chocolate cake," she admitted, "but I love the feeling of being alive more." Mum's blog evolved into a non-profit organization, Second Chance's Heart Health Initiative. With help from her cardiac rehab friends and some tech-savvy grandchildren, she created resources for people facing similar health crises. The organization provided meal planning guides for cardiac patients, emotional support groups for lifestyle changes, financial assistance for those who couldn't afford healthy food cooking classes, in underserved communities advocacy for better cardiac care access. "I was privileged," Mum acknowledged at the first board meeting. "I had insurance, family support, resources. Not everyone gets a second chance like I did. We need to change that." Watching my mother, who'd spent decades focused solely on her own pleasures, become a community activist was remarkable. She lobbied local government for better food options in hospital cafeterias. She worked with schools to improve lunch programs. She became, in her words, a pain in the ass for good health. The girl who'd been suspended in high school for organizing a protest about cafeteria food had come full circle, now protesting for healthier cafeteria food. On the 4th anniversary of the event, we returned to the hospital where it all began. Not as patient and family, but as speakers for their new cardiac wellness program. Mum stood at the podium in the same cardiac unit where she'd fought for her life. 4 years ago, I coded twice on an operating table in this building, she began. I was clinically dead for a total of 3 minutes. Those were the most important 3 minutes of my life because they led to everything that came after. She spoke about denial, about the addiction-like nature of sugar dependence, about the fear of change being overcome by the fear of death. She spoke about losing her identity as the fun food grandma and finding a new one as the alive and thriving grandma. I used to think healthy eating meant deprivation, she said. Now I know unhealthy eating is the real deprivation. It deprives you of energy, of years, of seeing your grandchildren grow up. The audience, patients, families, medical staff listened intently. Some cried. Many nodded in recognition. All applauded when she finished with, "If someone as stubborn and sugar-addicted as I was can change, anyone can. You just have to want to live more than you want that donut." Perhaps the most profound impact was on the next generation. My daughter, who'd watched her grandmother's transformation during her teenage years, chose to study nutrition in college. My nephew, who'd declared Grandma broken when she stopped giving out cookies, now proudly told friends about his super-healthy grandma who used to be sick but fixed herself. Mom's influence extended to her peer group's grandchildren too. The cardiac rehab group became like an extended family, their grandchildren learning that vegetables could be delicious and exercise could be fun. "We're changing family trees," Mum told me one day, watching her granddaughter teach her friend how to read nutrition labels, a skill Mum had passed down. Not just our own health, but generational patterns. She was right. The woman who'd learned unhealthy habits from her own mother, emotional eating, food as reward, denial of health issues, had broken the cycle. Her grandchildren would grow up with a different relationship to food and health. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 5 years after Mum's angioplasty. Not from the hospital this time, but from her friend Marion. "Your mother saved my life," Marion sobbed into the phone. Marion had been experiencing chest pains for weeks, dismissing them as indigestion. But remembering Mom's story, remembering the warning signs Mom constantly preached about, she'd gone to the emergency room. 90% blockage, Marion reported later, recovering from her own angioplasty. The doctor said another few days and it could have been a massive heart attack. Mom visited Marion daily, bringing heart-healthy meals, sharing recovery tips, being the support system she'd needed during her own crisis. "This is why I lived," Mom told me that night. "Not just for myself, but for moments like this, to help others avoid what I went through, or at least survive it if they can't." As I write this, it's been 6 years since that terrifying night in the cardiac ICU. Mum is 73 now, healthier than she was at 60. She still blogs, still teaches, still preaches the gospel of second chances and lifestyle change. Her latest project is a cookbook, From Death's Door to Kitchen Floor, a cardiac patient's guide to delicious, healthy eating. Publishers were interested not just in the recipes, but in her story, the transformation that made the recipes necessary and possible. "I never thought I'd write a cookbook without butter as a main ingredient," she laughed, testing recipes for the 100th time. "Your father would be so confused. But I think Dad would be proud that she chose life, proud that she turned tragedy into purpose, proud that the woman he loved was still here, different but essentially the same, still larger than life, just in healthier ways." Her cardiologist continues to be amazed at her progress. Recent scans show not just stable arteries, but actual improvement in some areas, almost unheard of in cardiac patients her age. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," he tells her at each appointment. "Living," she responds. "I'm just living. Finally." If you had told me that night in the hospital, watching my mother fight for her life, that she would become a health advocate, blogger, cookbook author, an inspiration to thousands, I would have thought the stress had broken me. But that's the power of second chances, of wake-up calls heard and heeded. Mom didn't just survive her angioplasty complications. She used them as a catalyst for complete transformation. The woman who nearly died clutching a candy bar now lives each day with purpose, health, and joy. She proved that it's never too late to change, never too late to choose life over habits, never too late to rewrite your story. "Death knocked twice," she wrote in a recent blog post. But life answered louder. Her journey continues. Every day brings choices: what to eat, how to move, how to handle stress, how to find joy without sugar. But now those choices are informed by experience, motivated by memory, and sustained by the knowledge of what's at stake. Mom still has a sweet tooth. She still occasionally dreams about chocolate cake. But she no longer lets cravings control her life. She's learned that the sweetest thing in life isn't sugar. It's being alive to taste whatever comes next. As she approaches her 74th birthday, she's planning a celebration, not with cake, though there will be a sugar-free version for those who want it, but with a 5K walk-run for heart health, raising money for cardiac patient support programs. "I want my birthday to mean something," she explained, "to celebrate not just another year, but another chance to help someone else get their second chance." The woman who nearly died during an angioplasty didn't just survive, she thrived. And in thriving, she's helped countless others do the same. Her story isn't unique in its beginning. Millions face cardiac disease, diabetes, and the consequences of unhealthy lifestyles. But it's extraordinary in its outcome. Proof that with determination, support, and sometimes a terrifying wake-up call, transformation is possible. Mom's journey from that operating table to today hasn't been easy. There were setbacks, struggles, moments of despair, but she faced each challenge with the same stubbornness that once drove her unhealthy habits, redirecting that force toward healing and health. "I'm the same person," she insists when people marvel at her transformation. "I just point my stubbornness in a better direction now." Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson. We don't need to become different people to change our lives. We just need to redirect our existing strengths toward better goals. Mum nearly died during an angioplasty. What happened next didn't just change everything, it saved everything. And in saving herself, she's helped save others, creating a ripple effect of health and hope that continues to spread. Her story is one of second chances seized, of habits transformed, of life chosen over convenience. It's proof that it's never too late to change, never too late to choose health, never too late to become the person you were meant to be. The woman who entered that operating room as a sugar-addicted, medication-skipping, exercise-avoiding patient emerged not just as a survivor, but as a warrior for health. And her battle continues, one healthy choice at a time, one life saved at a time, one story shared at a time. This is her legacy, not just the years she's added to her life, but the life she's added to her years and the lives she's touched along the way. Mom nearly died during an angioplasty. What happened next changed everything, and thank God it did.